Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered Figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSIN family podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ben Wilson, who does such amazing work here at VSIN. His play-by-play work is really second to none, whether that be in college basketball, college baseball. I know that he does some tennis, list goes on and on. We're going to chat with him about what we've seen here in the Sweet 16 thus far. Look forward to these 4 games that we've got on this Friday as well, and just who he feels like are the best teams remaining in the NCAA Tournament. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really not a lot of Twitter/X questions. We did get one big hire out there with the coaching search as well. I will give you guys just 10 seconds on this. Boston College, they are going to be hiring on Luke Murray. And if that sounds familiar, his father, Bill Murray, helped take down the Monstars way back in the day. Obviously, he goes to all the games. He's been a really good assistant over at places like Xavier. He's on the UConn staff currently. So I thought that was a very good hire for Boston College. Certainly is not going to hurt when you go into a recruit's room and you're like, hey, you know what? My dad was in What About Bob? He was in the Space Jam movies, all that good stuff. So I do think that that's a step in the right direction for Boston College. Good hire there, and we had ourselves some great college basketball games on Thursday. Let's take a look back at them, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Purdue ekes it out at the end, 79-77. They're able to take down Texas. Texas was on their A game from 3. Purdue was not. Purdue just 4 of 20 from 3. Fletcher Lawyer goes 4 of 8 from 3. Rest of the team was 0 of 12, but for Texas, 8 of 15 at the free throw line, while they went 11 of 25 from 3. For Purdue, 15 of 20 at the free throw line. And you lose a game by 2, that is a difference out there, kids. And for Purdue, they won the turnover battle as well, 7 of 4. Even though Braden Smith was cold from 3, still supplied the team with 16 points, 5 assists, and then Trey Kaufman-Red was able to lead the way, 20 big points, 8 rebounds out of him. For Texas, Tremont Mark came to play in this game, 29 points, 11 of 15 from the floor, 5 of 7 from 3. Jordan Pope, he went 4 of 9 from 3 as well, but not much outside those two guys. Jalen Swain, he was able to throw in there a really good performance as well, but the ancillary guys need to step up a little bit more, so that's one Big Ten team into the Elite Eight. You knew that you were going to get one out of this matchup between Iowa and Nebraska, and for Nebraska, they were leading at the half, they were leading throughout much of this game, and they, shall we say, crumble late. As for Iowa, they get the job done, 77-71 the final. As for Nebraska, they were up 62-57 with about 8 minutes and change remaining. They had the lead for 81% of the game, and then for Iowa, they put together a bonsai charge, and they go 13 out of 30 from 3. Nebraska has been so good at guarding the arc all season long, but on this day, they ran into Tate Sage, who off the bench went for 19 points, 4 of 7 from 3. For Iowa, they do a really good job in terms of winning the turnover battle by kind of 10-5 as well. For Nebraska, they do win that rebound battle, 35-26. You had Berkey Butisel be able to supply 10 rebounds in this game, and then for Price Sanford, he did his best. He's a former Iowa Hawkeye, by the way, 25 points out of him, but other than Braden Frager off the bench at 16 points, everyone else held the single digits, so Iowa, they do find a way to persevere and get the job done there. And then in the late slate, you had a masonry event between Illinois Illinois and Houston. Houston held to 55 points in this game. Illinois, they persevere. They get the job done. This by a count of 65-55. For Houston, they got 64 field goal attempts up. They only made 22 of them, though, and they go 9 of 32 from three-point range. Emmanuel Sharp, he did live up to his name with 17 points, but really nobody else around him was able to step up. Illinois does lose the Turner battle 9-5, but they win the rebound battle 43-34 as you had David Mirkovic be able to supply 14 points, 10 rebounds, double-double out of Keaton Wagler. 13 points, 12 rebounds, only goes 4 of 14 from the floor, but made a nice impact with regards to hitting the boards. And then for Arkansas, no defense played here whatsoever. They give up 54 points in the first half, 55 in the second, 109-88. Arizona, they do persevere, get the job done as they go 30 out of 39 at the free throw line. For Darius Acuff, he did his best. He supplied the team with 28 points, but for Arkansas, just 5 of 23 from 3. Arizona, 5 of 8 from 3-point, and they shot 64% from the floor. Arizona does lose the turnover battle by a count of 12-9, but every single one of their starters, 14-plus points in this game. Main headliner Braden Murray's, he was able to supply the team with 23 points, so they are on to the Elite Eight as well. And then if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, over the last 7 days, it's been very much 50-50 with regards to the totals. 23 overs to 24 unders. Meanwhile, the favorites, 26-21 against the spread, so hitting at 55.3%. If you're looking overall for the season, right now the favorites are hitting at just 48.5%. Underdogs, 2,951 and 2,777 against the spread, while the unders still hitting at 50.7%. 2,907 unders, 2,822 overs, with all but one game, by the way, on Thursday going over the total. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now. That's where we're all getting trend-wise as well. And coming next, how about if we chat it up with our good friend Ben Wilson, does amazing work here at the network, and we're going to take a look at those Friday Sweet 16 games with him right here on Cusco 6 with myself, Craig Peterson, now a part of the VSIN Family Podcast.
Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSIN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSIN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSIN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSIN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSIN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSIN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSIN. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Wilson aboard. He does such great work here at VSIN, doing a lot of our live betting shows, doing a great job on so many different fronts, whether that be football, basketball, tennis, you name it, he does it. It's starting to be college baseball season. He does a great job on that front, as he's got some of the best tones that you're going to find out there in play-by-play. Does a great job on that front, and a man that you're able to follow on the old Twitter/X as first name Ben, an underscore, last name Wilson, and then another underscore, and the number one all together. And Ben, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, absolutely. We're getting into the business end, aren't we?
Oh, we certainly are, and it is going to be really interesting to see what we get moving forward. And when it comes to the Sweet 16, we're doing this before we know how the results for Thursday turned out, but just how'd you take a look at the first week of the NCAA tournament? One where we did see a few upsets, but at the same time, really no mid-majors remaining in the field.
You know, it's interesting, at least personally for me this year, first round went really well. And I think so often from the betting angles, you kind of adjust and tweak things as far as your handicaps are concerned based on how you do out of the gates. And I think for me, really good round one, awful round two. And I think part of that was I didn't want to adjust or overreact to the first data points since a lot of my initial handicaps were good, but that really did me in, to be honest. You think about some of the second games, and I was kicking myself Virginia, Gonzaga both looked very shaky in their first games. I tried not to read too much into it, and of course those sorts of things came home to roost in game two. Same deal with really liking Louisville, thinking okay, look, the near meltdown in round one against South Florida, that was more of a situational play or circumstance that happened to them. They'll be fine. The 3-point shooting is going to be enough to keep them within the number against Michigan State. That obviously didn't happen. So I think that's where the hard part becomes, is with each round, fewer games, fewer edges on the board, much more matchup dependent, not as many situational angles to take a look at. So I think that's kind of the challenge now that we're into this final handful of games here, so to speak.
Absolutely, and I always say this as well, and I'm not sure if you agree/disagree, but as the games get bigger, I don't care what sport it is, whether that be the baseball playoffs, whether that be the NFL playoffs here in the NCAA tournament, I think that it becomes harder and harder to find edges in these games, and additionally, you probably want to be scaling your bet size down rather than going bigger on some of these games, just because, we saw some very wacky results in the second round of the NCAA tournament. I'm sure that we're going to see them in the Sweet 16, where one or two good/bad breaks can make or break you if you go too heavy.
It is very true. I think anybody, if you've been doing this long enough, you've gotten burned by making a too big of a bet, say in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. And, for me, at this point, I'm not going to have as many big single game positions just because I got a lot of stuff tied up either in, bracket pools, right, where certain results are going to result in me being either in the money or out. So it's almost like having a bet, or in Survivor. I'm saying this, I'm still alive in Survivor as we're recording going into Thursday. So hopefully for our sake, I'm still able to use that, same line of thinking into Friday, and I'm still alive here. So it's that's where sometimes you want to make sure you don't get too tied into some of these single game results, where make sure to remember and look at your portfolio, what you got, whether it's futures, bracket pool, Survivor, whatever. You're probably going to be tied financially to one of these results without actually having to make a specific bet to it. So that's also another one where you don't want to get overexposed. And I think just, friendly reminder going into all this stuff is these games tend to get wonky. They tend to be very much coin flip type games. And we're seeing that as evidenced by the way the spreads are.
Absolutely. A lot of tight spreads going into this Friday, as we do have Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSIN, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And how do you take a look at the Friday slate? Because you mentioned getting a little bit burnt by Michigan State. They're the slight underdog against UConn. And personally, I did take a position on Michigan State to be able to get it done here with UConn. Just don't know what I'm getting out of Silas Emery. And then Iowa State, I think it's such a big question mark because Joshua Jefferson is going to try to give it a go. But even if he does, I think we'd both be thinking that he is going to be very, very, very far from 100%.
Oh, no, 100%. I think if you like Iowa State, it goes with the assumption that you think they can win without him. And, look, I covered Dominic Nelson when he was in the WAC at Utah Valley. That's a guy who has certainly always had the look of a legit Power 4 conference guy. And for him to be in a position to contribute, I think is big. I think at the end of the day, I'm just trusting TJ Otzelberger in the spot that he's in. And you look at the matchup, I still like Iowa State anyway. That's going to be, if I get to Friday, going to be my Survivor pick. Partially because I see the defense being able to win the day here. I mean, the biggest issue I would have if I'm facing Tennessee is just controlling the glass and with how many offensive rebounds they suck in. But you think about it, it's not a team. We saw this, in Virginia's comeback attempt, and we saw Tennessee get really careless with the ball, and that's plagued them a lot this year. They turned it over about as much as anybody still left here in the final 16. And again, Iowa State forces teams to turn it over at a top 5 rate in the country here. So it's a situation where I think defensively it's a pretty good matchup for TJ Otzelberger, able to get sort of matchups he likes. And with Nate Amons, I mean, I think he's looked a little bit, I don't want to say overmatched, that's not the right word, but he's looked a little deer in the headlights-ish through these first couple of rounds. Didn't really come into play in the Miami game because they were out so big and out so far ahead early. But against Virginia, when it got tight, he looked a little shaky, and that's the thing I worry about for Tennessee is putting together enough possessions where they are not giving up live ball turnovers that Iowa State can turn into points on the other end.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that for Tennessee, you just mentioned it, if they take care of the ball, they have a good chance to win this game outright. If they don't, boy, it's going to be a long night for them. So that's going to be a very interesting one. And then how do you take a look at what I like to call the game of volatility on the board? That'd be Alabama versus Michigan, with Michigan 9.5 point favorites, because I feel like this is a game where you can bet alternate lines if you really want to, because I just genuinely don't think that this is going to come down to the spread. I think Alabama has a chance to be able to win this game outright if they hit their threes. And if they don't, they have a chance to lose this game by 20 plus. I want to get your thoughts here, because with Alabama, they seem like the most, shall we say, highest ceiling and lowest floor team that is going to be playing here on Friday.
And I was in total fade mode of them coming in, and it really had nothing to do with the off the court issues and the potential availability of an Aiden Holloway. It was more just these teams who play at a super fast tempo and don't really defend are very, very vulnerable once you get to the big dance. And that was one of the first round picks of mine that went really south. I it felt like everybody in the world was on Hofstra plus the points, and that looked good for a while until all of a sudden it didn't. I think about even the Texas Tech matchup, it was clearly just more of an example of controlling the tempo early in a way that Alabama wanted to. We're able to get the Red Raiders out of their comfort zone and forcing them to play from behind. But I think against Michigan, that was my pre-tournament pick to win it all. I feel just as good about that through 2 rounds as honestly probably even better with how Duke has looked extremely vulnerable, with obviously Florida now being out. I'll certainly take my chances here with Michigan still to run the table and get the job done. But the issue for Alabama is just because you can control tempo and play fast, well, that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to Michigan. They're totally content to play fast. It's a team that, to me, just checks every box as far as tons of height and length defensively, ability to slow you down on the defensive end if they really want to, but at the same time, more than capable of speeding things up and can score inside, outside. They're super efficient in really all areas. And you've seen every single time they've been tested outside of conference, they have won in just epic blowout fashion, with the exception of a couple of those games very early in the season. So I'm more of the mindset of thinking this kind of step up in class the yoke Alabama is facing in Michigan here is more worthy of a bet to the blowout as far as alt lines go. Like if you wanted to, laying up 16.5 or something with Michigan, I would very much be inclined to take that, assuming you were giving me a good plus money payout.
Yep, it just feels like this could be a little bit of an all-or-nothing situation for Alabama. And while Michigan is so strong down low, one of the best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball as well, to your point, as we do have Ben Wilson, who does such amazing work over here at VSIN, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And then that last Sweet 16 game that we've got for Friday, that is going to be St. John's versus UConn. We saw a lot of 7s on St. John's, starting to see some 6.5s pop up. Want to get your thoughts here, because with this Duke team, obviously they have been so rock solid all season long. One of those few losses that Michigan took was to Duke, but as we know, this is a bunch that's very banged up. Caleb Foster gonna try to give it a go, but even if he goes, I think that's very safe to say he's going to be very far from 100%. And for St. John's, many people thought that they were the most underseeded team in the field, and they had a little bit of a wobbly situation against Kansas, but find themselves here in the Sweet 16 with an amazing coach.
Yeah, it's probably a stay away for me. I totally understand, the money coming in here on the dog, and even, there's still, I think, a stray 7 out there. You mentioned how this has come down now to mostly 6.5s. Would certainly be the dog or pass, if nothing else. I think the classic thing is you don't want to necessarily overreact to, a Duke team that, as they even admitted in game, did not take their first round opponent seriously. We're in kind of a weird, grinded out defensive matchup against TCU in the second round, and ultimately we're able to sort of just get by based on the personnel they had. And as much as you've learned over time never to just say, okay, well, that struggle in the first weekend just totally means that, blue blood is out of it. I do see St. John's, just the physicality on defense, what they did to Kansas. And I think the thing that went maybe underappreciated was the fact that, St. John's very easily wins that game by 40. There are certainly a couple of different outcomes where if St. John's is making wide open mid-range shots and wide open threes, that game was over at halftime, yet they weren't able to do it. Kansas able to just kind of grit their way to a tight game at the end and force the Red Storm to beat them at the buzzer. But I think the defensive numbers that some people poked holes in because of the competition in the Big East, that to me has certainly shown in the first 2 round games, Greg, that is legit enough to hold up. And I think part of it is, how do they hold up against the interior shots of Duke, which have been so reliable all year, but have been very hit or miss in the first two rounds. And that's the strength of St. John's defensively, is limiting 3-point looks, forcing teams to take kind of awkward in the trees, so to speak, shots in the paint. And that's what this game really, for my money, comes down to. How can they do that, as opposed to also needing some of those shots in their own offensive end to fall? I think that's what it comes down to me. I'd probably take under of anything where you're sitting, low 140s. I know that's come down already a couple points, but end of the day, I still think that these issues that have been exposed by Duke over the last two rounds, it's not like they're just going to magically vanish now against a legit top 10 defense.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I do think that for this Duke squad, it's going to be interesting to see how they do on the low post, because without Caleb Foster only shooting about 44.3% from the floor, so they haven't been quite the same on offense. That did push me a little bit more to the under myself. So that's going to be an interesting one, as we've got 4 great games on Friday. And Ben, I do recognize that we're doing this as Thursday's games still in the balance, but out of the 16 teams that made the Sweet 16, who did you feel like was truly playing the best basketball of all of them? Because for my money, it was Arizona. Again, we don't know if they were able to get by Arkansas as I'm doing this podcast, so might look like a genius, might look like a moron for saying that, but I take a look at what Arizona's been able to do. They've been so complete, and I think that they should be able to get by Arkansas, and I think that they've become the team to beat here in the tournament.
Yeah, for me, it was Michigan 1, Arizona 2, and then honestly, I put Michigan State 3, Duke 4. I do like Michigan State to and I think it's a great kind of X's and O's matchup. I still have a lot of respect for Dan Hurley and what UConn's been able to do, despite clearly not having the personnel that they've had in years past when they were winning titles. But Michigan State will 100% be a bet for me if they get to the Elite Eight. If it is Duke, even if it's St. John's, would still even laying points would still be an angle I'd want to take. So that's kind of how I looked at it. Houston was sort of number 5 for me after that, and I'm fascinated to see how the Thursday game plays out between Illinois and Houston. I'm sort of hoping for, as like survivor purposes, if I get through, like Houston will be a team I target in one of the Elite Eight matchups for sure. Arizona would probably be second, just because I do believe in Michigan long term, but that's how I'd at least stack it up right now, and hard to poke a lot of holes in in that group of 5 I just laid out.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of those teams moving forward. And Ben, I know you're doing an amazing job on so many different fronts, whether that be looking at the rest of the NCAA tournament, college baseball is a place where you shine. You do some great work on the tennis front and so much more. So love the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
You got it as always, Greg. Ben_Wilson_1. All the above that you mentioned, we're fully moving ahead on. So great time of year, to say the least.
Absolutely. And Ben, every single time he joins me, lends such amazing insights. Big thanks to Ben for joining me out Coast to Coast Seeps, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday, as we hit some bank shots.
Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. It's always a pleasure to be joined by our good friend Ben Wilson, who does such amazing work here at VSIN, one of the best play-by-play men that you're going to find in the business. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday, as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order a little bit better than what we've been finding here in the last few days, as we're going to start with that earliest game out west with St. John's, that earliest game out east with St. John's versus Duke, and then Michigan State versus UConn, and then the games in the other region with Alabama, Michigan, Tennessee versus Iowa State. Let's get things started. 621, 622. Duke is a 6.5 point favorite here against St. John's. Totals between 140.5 to 141.5. I did take a shot on the under. I set my total at a 140.5. Without question, this is a St. John's team that is certainly looking to move it. They're a top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. Duke has been a pretty slow and controlled team, though. This is not what you found in the past. We're an 80th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Duke, numero uno in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. St. John's is right there in the top 10 as well. Now, I know that Caleb Foster is going to try to give it a go. If he gives you anything whatsoever, that's going to be a surprise to me, as he's been out the last 5 games, and you'll look at Duke without him over the last 5 games, shooting 44.3% from the floor, 30% from 3, and while you've got Cameron Boozer, who's been amazing, 22.5 points, 10.3 rebounds, a steal and a half per contest, it is a case where they need a little bit more, getting back Patrick Ngangba only for 13 or so minutes, but that has helped them out quite a bit. That means that they're going to be rock solid down low, and they're going to need it, because St. John's has one of the best duos down low in all of college basketball. Zuby Ejiofor, coupled with Dylan Mitchell, these two guys have been able to combine for about 13.5, 14 rebounds per game, and then Bryce Hopkins really goes under the radar with what Ejiofor is able to do, because he throws in there 2.2 blocks, 3.5 assists per game, but Hopkins, 35% three-point shooter, 13.5 points per game. Not a St. John's team that has been lighting the world on fire with their shooting. As a matter of fact, well outside the top 180 with their 2-point shooting percentage, they shoot only about 33.2% from the outside. That's outside the top 200 as well, but they've been able to make their hay in terms of giving themselves some second and third chances. St. John's, in terms of percentage of their missed shots, have resulted in an offensive rebound, 45th in the country. You've got a Duke team that's been able to do a solid job giving themselves second and third chances with Ngangba back. That should be able to help out at 8, but I do think that this is going to be a defensive slog. Duke has clearly not been 100%, so set my line at 5.5. I do like the points with St. John's, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. 623, 624, Michigan State. They are the underdog going up against UConn. UConn, a 1.5 point to 2-point favorite. So this game between 134 to 134.5. Set a total here of a 134.5. 134 is my absolute max buy point on the over, but I do like the over mainly because this has been a Michigan State team that has shot it incredibly from 3-point range away from home. I don't know if there's any sort of truth to the theory that Michigan State has like a wonky rim or something like that. I know that Luka Garza mentioned that, but Michigan State has shot 32.7% from 3-point range at home, 40.3% away from home. Meanwhile, we've got a UConn team that they're okay with their shooting. They shoot 35% from 3-point range away from home. That is a top 100 mark in the country. UConn, they rely very much on second and third chances. They're rebounding 35.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in games played away from home. That is 9th in the country, but now they go up against a Michigan State team that allows opponents to grab just 19% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in games played away from home. That is numero uno in all of college basketball, and they've got the best facilitator in this game as Jeremy Fears. He's been able to give this team 9.5 assists, 15.5 points per game. Only shoots about 32% from 3, but keeps the offense flowing nice and smooth. Michigan State not going to generate turnovers outside the top 3 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but pretty solid in not giving those second and third chances, not allowing you clean looks. And additionally, you've got Jackson Kaler, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, right around about 9 rebounds per game. Cohen Carr, he throws in there about 12 points per game. And for UConn, they did get back Silas Emery in that last game against UCLA. Came in off the bench, looked relatively okay. I think that he's close to 100% in this game, as he's been giving the team 4.5 boards, 6 assists, 7.5 points per game, but I don't think that he's quite back at 100%. So Braylon Mullins, who's been a really good freshman, give you 12 points per game. He's going to need to step up. You've obviously got the veteran Alex Caravan, who's been able to give you 13.5 points. He shoots about 40% for 3, but in the end, UConn not getting those second and third chances, I think is going to be the difference in the game. So at a 134 or less, like the over, and Michigan State on the money line, 625, 626. Alabama is going to be playing against Michigan. This is from out there in the great state of Illinois, with Alabama 8.5 to 9.5 point underdogs. So on this game between 172.5 to a 173.5. Semi-total at a 172.5. 173 plus does become my buy point on the under. Now, truth be told, I'm going to be waiting in the AM to see where this moves. If we can get above a 173 or so, that'd be more advantageous to take the under. / if we can get down below 172, I will be taking a look at the over, because this Alabama team, obviously they like to move a top 8 team in terms of total possessions per game. Obviously you're not going to be having Aiden Holloway out there, shoots 43.8% from 3, 17 points per game. They did not need him against Texas Tech, as LeBaron Filan, he's a walking bucket, 21.5 points, he shoots 40% from 3, and it's a Michigan team that has guarded the 3-point line well teams are shooting just 30% from three against them. That is a top 15 mark in the country, and obviously Michigan is going to be able to do a rock-solid job down low. You've got three different guys, Yaxel Lindenborg, Gade Mara, along with Morris Johnson, who all give you at least 6.9 rebounds per game. Between the three of them, you're able to get about 5 blocks per contest. Lindenborg, 14.5 points. Johnson, 13.5. Mara gives you about 12, but then you've got Trey McKinney, who stepped up in a big way for LJ Kaysen, shooting about 38% from three. Nabari Burnett shoots 39% from the outside, and it's a Michigan team that is a top 55 team themselves in terms of total possessions per game, so I do think that you get a bit of an up-tempo game, and for Alabama, even though they are well outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they've been able to do one thing relatively well on the defensive side of things. They don't allow you good looks on the inside with this Alabama team. 27th in the country in opponent's 2-point shooting percentage and games played away from home. Think that keeps them lively. Semi-line at 8.5. We'll take 9+ with Alabama, and at a 173+, like the under, wrap things up with 627, 628. Tennessee is going to be playing against Iowa State. Iowa State, a favorite here of 3.5 to 4.5 points. Tallest game, 139.5 to 140.5. Did take the points with Tennessee. I set them as an underdog of 3.5. The Joshua Jefferson injury looms large, and it's going to be strength on strength. Iowa State, top 5 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It's a Tennessee team that's been wobbly with their ball security outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but also they are hauling in their 15.8 offensive rebounds per game. They're rebounding about 44% of their business as an offensive rebound. Numero uno in the country. You've got Nate Amon, who's been rock solid with about 17 points, 6.5 boards, and he's not an amazing three-point shooter, but can shoot about 33% from three. Jacoby Gillespie, 5.5 assists per game. The turnovers have been a little bit rampant, but when you've got the likes of Felix Apara, Jalen Carey down low, combining for 12 rebounds per game, even a guy like an Amari Evans has been able to do a nice job stepping up, giving you a few boards, a steal per contest. I do think that for this Tennessee team, they're going to be able to remain lively, especially with the way that they guard the arc. Tennessee, a top 25 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage at about 30.5%. I would say it has been a top 15 team with their own three-point shooting percentage at 38.7%. Milan Mimoselovic has been able to give you 17 points. He shoots 49% from three. After that, you do have a little bit of a fall off, and Jefferson has been one of those top guys from the outside, shooting about 34.5% from three, 16 points, 7.5 boards, leader in rebounds. Also has been giving you about 5 assists per game. Do still have the quarterback of the defense out there in Taman Lipsby, 2.3 steals, 5 assists. That's going to be big in terms of generating turnovers, and that is a big reason why I do like the under. I do think they get a lot of dead possessions in this game, semi-total 139.5, but I do think that for Iowa State, you need to be mindful of if you're laying the number. The free throw shooting, 67.7% is what they shoot at the free throw line, outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Now, Tennessee is not necessarily great themselves. Tennessee, they're shooting more like 69.6% at the free throw line, about 275th in the country, but I think that keeps Tennessee within the number. I semi-line at 3.5, so we'll take 4+ here of Tennessee, semi-total 139.5, so also like the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSIN. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, I have one or two ways for you to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Junit_D1. Keep in mind, largely the mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day. It's an analysis on every day, so I'll be back with you once you get them out. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Duke, and I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Listen, I used to think that I was my most stylish in my 20s, but honestly, style and confidence only get better with age. And that is why I love Figs. These scrubs are beautiful, comfortable, and they are built to last. They're not those boxy, scratchy uniforms that we all started out in. No. These fit perfectly. They feel amazing, and the quality is just wow! My favorite color? Burgundy. It's chic, it's timeless, and it's even the same color as my apartment, because I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I love adding custom embroidery to make my scrubs as personal as my style. And since I work in telehealth, my embroidered figs even double as my ID badge. It's never too late to reinvent yourself or your scrubs. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with the code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX for 15% off your first order.